And welcome everybody to Two Guys on Politics with Bill Lipinski, the former congressman, and myself, Ray Hanania. It's Saturday, January 10, 2026, and this is season 5, episode 2. And Two Guys on Politics is broadcast on the U.S. Arab Radio Network on WNZK AM 690 radio in Michigan, as well as on YouTube at twoguysonpolitics.com. In today's podcast, Bill and I are going to discuss a number of topics. One is the biggest one in the news, obviously, this ICE shooting in Minneapolis of Renee Nicole Good by an ICE agent. It's created quite a stir. She was killed in that shooting during this confrontation while she was in the car. We're also going to talk about Trump's threats to take over Greenland, a semi-autonomous country, either by negotiation or by force, he says. And Trump is pressuring, it appears, María Corina Machado, the Venezuelan political activist who opposed Maduro, but didn't run, but was one of the leaders of the opposition, to give Trump her Nobel Peace Prize that she received from the Nobel Committee, but the Nobel Committee is saying that can't be done. The House on Thursday also passed a bill to resurrect health care. 17 Republicans broke from Trump and Speaker Johnson to support that bill with Democrats, and it passed. Trump says he's going to cut credit card interest rates to 10% for 1 year only. What is that about? It's certainly, I don't believe it's about us. And then finally, we're going to talk about Bill Lipinski's column that he wrote this week about the need to control rare earth minerals to take the lead from China. At Hanania.com is where it's at. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about these in discussions with myself and my co-host, former Congressman Bill Lipinski. We'll be right back right after these messages. I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski, and this is Two Guys on Politics.
Bill, obviously the news all of the last few days has been dominated by this tragedy in Minneapolis, Minnesota, regarding a woman whose name is Renee Nicole Good. She was 37. It just seems like a normal housewife driving her normal SUV vehicle near where there was a confrontation between protesters and ICE agents. And as the ICE agents approached her car, she seemed to take off, and the ICE agent shot her, I think, a couple times and killed her. And then her car, there's a video that shows her car crashing into another car. What was your first impression? And I mean, it took a while to get the information, right? But what do you make of what happened? What was your first impression when you saw
it? First of all, I want to say it's a terrible tragedy
that
this woman was shot and she died. Okay, I mean, I think we can all agree upon that. After that, it seems like there's a very, very wide difference of opinion of what happened. Now, I personally have watched, ever since it occurred, all the videos, heard all the people comment, and I finally come down on the side that this woman, unfortunately, along with what appears to be her partner, came to the demonstration to participate in the demonstration,
right,
to harass the ICE people, along with a whole bunch of other people. Originally, it was said that she was driving home from dropping off some of her children at school, and that there were gifts in the back seat. But based upon everything else I've heard, she deliberately went to that demonstration along with her partner. In fact, you can see her partner taking some video shots of what was going on between her and the ICE agent. Now, I don't think that she meant to run the ICE agent down, but she wasn't obeying the law. They had told her to get out of the car, and she refused to do so. First of all, she backed up rapidly, and then she went forward rapidly. Now, it seems to me like she did brush the person who wound up shooting her as she was turning away from him. She didn't mean, I don't believe, to hit him, but I can see how he would get very concerned about that because of the hostility of all these demonstrators. And on top of that, about 6 months ago, he was dragged 300 feet by another one of these demonstrators and really got banged up very, very badly. And I'm sure that that was on his mind. So I think it's a tragic mistake shooting her. I have sympathy towards him. I'm sorry he did it. I wish his training had been better, but how can we put ourselves in her position, his position? And as far as she is concerned, I'm sorry it happened to her, but I understand based upon what you had to say that she's had some problems with Trump in the past. That's my position on it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, first of all, you're right. I mean, her killing is a tragedy. She seemed like a nice person. And but really, what really bothers me is that the real story never came out. The activists and the media has been very anti-ICE, but mainly, and that's driven by being anti-Trump. I blame a lot of this on Trump because of his style of government. He wants confrontation. He pushes confrontation. I blame him for this, but
I
I don't blame ICE. I think ICE was out there to arrest individuals that are here illegally. Whether they do it right or wrong all the time, I'm not sure they're 100% correct. But I've always been taught if a police officer or a law enforcement official says stop, you listen to them, you do what they tell you to do, and you want to question them, do that afterwards and question them in a court of law. But in today's world, it's so polarized and angry. I think the protesters wanted something like this. This is exactly what they want. All these protesters have had whistles. They were there confronting ICE. It was a confrontation. Clearly, this woman and her wife, they're, a gay couple, I guess, with some kids. They were activists, as nice as this victim looks, she's in terms of her personality, you being so polite. She said something to him like, "Oh, I'm not trying to do anything." To the one officer before she moves the car in the direction of the other officer in front of her who was hit previously in another location. The wife was out there videotaping everything, and who knows what she was doing. We have no idea. She was part of the conflict and the confrontation. And I think that this woman who was killed was the victim of bad circumstance, not bad policy. I think, yeah, listen, I've always asked when police officers see somebody, why do they shoot to kill? And every time I talk to an officer says, listen, if you believe your life's in jeopardy, you can't take a chance and just wound the person. Why didn't you shoot him in the leg? Why'd you have to kill the person? No, because if there's a chance, if you feel your life is in jeopardy, you have to shoot to kill to end the jeopardy. Otherwise, you could be killed. Now, when we look back at it, it doesn't look like she was intentionally trying to run him over, but the officer was in front. And I think the media really distorted everything with the activists. They made it look like the officer on the side of the car was responsible, and you barely see the officer in front of the vehicle until at the last minute. So I just, this is a tragedy, but I blame it on the activists, and I think they should be responsible for it.
Why was her car parked like that in the middle of the street? What was she attempting to do there?
Yeah,
Block
that's
someone's traffic? Some cars coming down. I don't understand that. I mean, if she was just there,
right.
passing by, an innocent bystander, why was she trying to make a left turn on the street there? I don't, where there was no place to turn to.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, clearly they were not there as innocent bystanders.
Or not.
They were there as protesters. They were part of the protest. They were engaged in the protest, and whatever level between them, the wife was out there actively protesting. The woman who was killed was driving the car, and she seemed kind of innocent. In fact, I read a story where the wife, Rebecca Good, the wife of Renee, Nicole Good, said that she felt this tragedy because she believes she put her wife in this situation and was responsible for it. There's no doubt that this is a horrible story. Nobody ever wants to see it come to this. But the way it's being politicized is what bothers me. On the right, we have Kristi Noem, the head of the Department of Homeland Security, and President Trump, and even the vice president. They're just completely, these people are dangerous. They're doing all this. And the activists on the left saying that no, we didn't do anything. Both sides are fueling this fire. They don't care, in my opinion, about cracking down on illegal immigrants. Neither side does. Neither side cares about immigration. They just care about hating each other. And I think that's the foundation that resulted in what happened. It's just really tragic.
Well, it is tragic, and I believe that there is a nationwide effort in this country to fund demonstrations like this against ICE, against Trump, against the American government. I've really come to that conclusion. I'm not a person who believes in conspiracies. I never have. But these people are so very, very well organized. I mean, I watched last night. Every one of them had a whistle. When they were crossing streets, they had people with vests on to block the traffic. They knew exactly where they were going. They knew exactly what they were going to say. They had the perfect signs to demonstrate. And there were no police out there whatsoever. Now, I think the mayor of Minneapolis should be impeached simply for what he had to say. No elected public officials should talk the way that man. Wow. I think it's reprehensible. And then I forgot all about the Democratic vice president, a candidate from the last time, having such an affinity, for China. He and his wife has visited China a number of
times. Very leftist. You're right. Very
far absolutely. Left. I don't know what's going on over here.
With your video, it's okay though. Don't worry about it. It's good.
Okay. Karnak the Magnificent on Johnny Carson. In and out, in and out. Getting back to our problem. So I think there's an organized conspiracy to fund people who are anti-American. And as much as I don't know if you agree or disagree, I really believe that there is a strong effort in this country to destroy capitalism and make this a socialist country. Now, I hate to say that because it sounds like somebody from Mars, making charges about the United States. But I have read so much about what is going on here. I just cannot believe all these demonstrations are that simultaneous. And really, when you come down to it, what it is to discredit ICE. It is to discredit Trump, who I don't mind being discredited, but it's to discredit the American government and make the other citizens of America start thinking, well, what kind of government do we have here? Are they really giving a fair shake to everyone? That's what concerns me more than anything else.
Yeah, and the as you point out, the mayor using the F-bomb, in the interview. Now, personally, I'm given what happened, that's kind of extreme, but Trump has done that and nobody says anything about him. So, and I'm not criticizing you. What I'm criticizing is this atmosphere where it's one side or nothing. So you have Trump and his side, you have the activists and their side. Neither side believes they're doing anything wrong. Neither side will take responsibility. I was very surprised that the wife of the woman who was shot and killed acknowledged that she felt she was responsible for her wife being killed. And I think in a way, the activism part is responsible for her being killed. And I think part of the other part of the problem is because of the way Trump has created this environment and the way the protesters are responding to that environment, it's built to result in these kinds of conflicts. These tragedies are built and made to happen, and they're going to continue to happen because neither side is being responsible. Neither side. I don't blame the ICE agents. They're put in the middle. They're like police officers. They're being put in a position where they have to do their job, and it's very hard to do. I don't know how they can do their job. We do need to crack down on illegal immigrants. We do need to get rid of them. The protesters don't want to do that. And they're willing to go all the way up to the wall on this issue and risk life and liberty to protect what they believe is more important. And I don't think that's the most important thing we should be doing. So it is a horrible tragedy, and it's certainly not the way it's being portrayed in the media, which just loves to exploit things. I just want final thought on this on the media. They came out and basically said that ICE killed this woman.
Right.
The media ginned this up in their reporting because the media is afraid of the activists locally. They don't want to say that the ICE agents were defending themselves. They didn't want to say that the wife of this victim was out there as an activist causing trouble with her video. They didn't want to question why was the car in that weird position. They don't want to ask the basic questions that they need to ask because it might make it look a way that the activists will get mad at them. So the media panders to the activists on local levels. And on the other side, we get the national media, this right-wing media that panders to the President Trump and Kristi Noem because they're more interested in how they're being treated by the audiences rather than delivering the news. And we're not getting the truth, and we're not getting the news presented in an accurate way. And that's very disturbing.
Last night I heard on News Nation that the demonstrators were going to all the hotels in Minneapolis, and they were going around checking the license plates on the cars in the hotel parking lots to find out if any of these cars belonged to ICE agents.
Right.
They had a way of tracking it down. When they did do that, they found out the names of the agent. They found out where they're from, who their family, what's in their family, and they were putting that out online.
Right.
That's something that ought to be against the law. I mean,
right. They should be prosecuted for that. I agree.
But I will say this in conclusion to this story. Oh, one last thing. I understand you mentioned at one time, I believe in a conversation, that the two of these women actually had gone to Canada when Trump had got elected.
It was part of their activism. When Trump was elected, they were so active. Now, listen, you and I, we were upset, right? But this couple went way beyond being upset. They actually sold their house. They moved out to Canada, and then after a little while realized that they didn't like living there, and then moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota a few months later. These were not regular people that were victimized by regular, innocent circumstances. These were activists. They were beyond activists. They took it to the point where they changed their lives. And to me, that tells me that this whole story has been skewered from the beginning. We don't get to hear it. It absolutely is a tragedy. I think we both agree she shouldn't have been shot and killed. It's just unfortunate that happened. But I don't blame the ICE agent 100% the way that they're blaming him for this. I think if there is a blame, I think the activists may have more of the blame by putting this woman in that line of fire. And maybe the ICE agent could have held back a little bit, but the circumstances are there because of the activists, and I think they're to blame.
Well, I just want to say that I've never voted for Trump. I can't say that I voted for the major person running against him either, to be perfectly truthful with you. Normally, I wound up voting for a third-party candidate. I think the first time he ran, I did vote for the major party candidate.
Hillary?
Oh, no, I take that back.
I couldn't vote for Hillary either.
No, I've never voted.
That's why I voted for Trump the first time, because and it was a protest vote. I didn't vote for Trump because I liked him. I voted for Trump because I didn't like Hillary. He turned out to be a terrible president. And then I voted for Biden the second time.
Yeah, I think I voted for Biden too because I knew Biden. I think that's the one time I did actually vote against a major candidate. On the other occasions, I voted for minor candidates who
Right.
I couldn't win, but I was voting against the two major candidates.
This
But
last election, I voted for Jill Stein. I think she would have been the best president, honestly,
I remember,
my
yes,
opinion.
I remember hearing you talk about Jill Stein. I got a little nauseated after the 50th time I had to listen to Jill Stein. But
They
that's
blame me, but I'm blaming you, Bill. I'm blaming you for sticking with whoever it was, Harris.
no, I didn't. I never stuck with Eric. No, but my point is that what I wanted, and I said this, what I wanted to see is I didn't care who won the presidency the last time, as long as the opposition party controlled at least the House or the Senate. To
Right.
me, that's what would have saved us
Divided.
from a lot of this at the present time. And a lot of
Divided government.
that didn't happen. But I didn't think of going to Canada, at
Right.
any time. And I didn't think these women should have thought of going to Canada either. But
You
I
really had to be an activist of extreme belief to say, I'm leaving and I'm moving to Canada.
well, I hope that what the woman who was killed partner had to say that she felt it was her fault that her partner wound up being killed. I hope that is a spark that can somehow tone down all this oratory that's going on, all this activism that's going on, and start people thinking that, we are all Americans. This is the greatest country in the world. We have to stop tearing ourselves apart. Somehow, once again, we have to become the United States of America. And I hope what this woman had to say might possibly spark that.
Yeah, you would hope that common sense would take over and that these fanatics on each side would be shouted down by common sense and moderation. But unfortunately, that's not what's happening. Each side is using this as an opportunity to just gin up the conflict even more than it is. Of course, conflict is our world today. Trump says that he's involved in threats. This is a guy who loves to brag about how tough he is and what a threat he is. He picks on the easiest victim, Venezuela. It was at the bottom of the list of drug traffickers, but it was the easiest to go after and attack. He's not going to go after China or Mexico, which are the two biggest drug traffickers in the world. And now he's pointed at Greenland, a semi-autonomous country. And he wants to either take it by negotiation or force from Denmark, which owns the country. It's part of Denmark. And Trump has created this, in my opinion, fabrication. He says we're going to take over Greenland because if we don't, the Russians and the Chinese are going to take them over. To me, he's exaggerating to justify his fanaticism. I don't know. You think China? I'm sure they'd all love to take over, but you really think that Russia or China would invade Greenland and take over?
No, but what I do think is that the Russians militarily would like to see Greenland become neutralized because they do a lot of military exercises up that way. And it would be a very good way for them to perhaps invade Canada, the United States, and anybody else that they might want to invade. So I don't have any problem with Trump wanting to militarize Greenland. I don't really think the people in Greenland would have any problem with it. But I think he could have sat down, with Denmark and said, here's the situation. Now, we're all members of NATO. I want to put more military troops into Greenland to protect it for you folks and for us from the Russians. I'm sure it could have been worked out. We have a large base right now on Greenland. We probably could have expanded that without anybody, caring about it one way or another. But he has to make this big deal about it. And I've said it time after time after time. This man, instead of using a scalpel to do things, uses a sledgehammer, and it comes back to haunt us.
Yeah, I agree with you. The only thing that I disagree with is that Denmark is a member of NATO. Russia is not going to attack Greenland or take over Greenland because it would be an attack against NATO. That Denmark owns Greenland. It's semi-autonomous. It's part of Denmark. Any attack on Greenland would be an attack on Denmark. In fact, what Trump has done, I think, has jeopardized NATO. He's always been against NATO. He's beat up on NATO. He wanted to show how tough he was, by attacking and denouncing and beating up on NATO. Denmark is saying that if the U.S. moves on Greenland, they will quit NATO and abandon NATO. And I think that there are a lot of countries that are upset who are in NATO with Trump that would do the same thing. And this is like, when you want to do something, and you touched on it a little bit, there's a way to do something the right way.
Absolutely.
Not the Trump way. The Trump way is the wrong way. That's clear in almost every circumstance.
Yeah, I don't think we have any disagreement on this at all, Ray. I say Greenland is strategically important to the defense of the United States and a number of other countries. But the way Trump has gone about it, it's just caused more problems for us. I know we don't want to start to see the NATO become, obsolete. It's been a force against, first of all,
we need it.
Union, now against Russia. It's helping Ukraine. Doesn't help Ukraine as much as I would like to see them do it, but they are helping Ukraine, okay? They're our ally. They've been our ally since at least 1946. Why jeopardize something by shooting your mouth off?
Yeah, it's the wall against communism and tyranny. And if NATO falls apart, Europe would fall apart. Imagine a world where the whole Eastern Hemisphere is controlled by the communists simply because NATO just disbanded and they took over everything. And we're left in the Western Hemisphere, which we are slowly. It's almost as if Trump is living in a world where he thinks that that's happened and he wants to take over the Western Hemisphere. He doesn't want Cuba or Russia or China to come into the Western Hemisphere. He makes stuff up. He lies. He makes stuff up. And I think it hurts our country. And I'm hoping, I don't know if I could wait a year. I'm worried that this is going to get worse over this next year. Trump is going to get very desperate. I think he's going to lose control of the House. We've already seen, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, 17 members of the Republicans joined with Democrats against his wishes and Johnson's wishes to support a bill. But let's just shift over to María Corina Machado, the Venezuelan opposition. I'm not going to call her the leader, but she's part of the leadership opposing Maduro, who was arrested by the United States during their, whatever we want to call it, action or invasion. There's still a debate about what we did. But she has offered to give President Trump the Nobel Peace Prize, her Peace Prize that she got this past year. She's offered to give it to him. And the Nobel Peace Committee has said, no, you just can't do that. You can't take what we gave you and bestow it upon somebody else as if from now on Trump can say he got the Nobel Peace Prize. It doesn't work like that. But I think that she's doing it because he wants it. And he intentionally singled her out and said she can't be the leader of Venezuela. And I think it's because he was jealous of her getting the Nobel Peace Prize. But if she gives a Nobel Peace Prize to him, he will make her the new president of Venezuela. And this is about his politics, not about the Peace Prize, not about what's right. This is very typical of what Trump does. He violates the law. He violates principle. He violates morality if it benefits him.
I can't add anything to that, Ray. You covered the field very, very well. I simply say I agree with the gentleman who had those remarks.
All right. Well, let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about the health care subsidy bill. We'll talk about Trump and his new credit card cutting the interest rates. And then we'll talk about your column, the rare earth minerals that we need to really focus on to take the lead away from China. We're going to take a break, folks, and we'll be right back right after these messages. And welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys on Politics. I'm Ray Hanania with my co-host, former Congressman Bill Lipinski. Bill, this is probably right in your area of expertise. The House on Thursday passed the bill that would resurrect health care subsidies that Trump really wanted to trim because it was part of the ACA, the American Care Act, which everybody calls the Obamacare. And people say, why did they call it Obamacare? And I keep telling them it's not the official name. People just colloquially refer to it as Obamacare, but it's the American Care Act. So, don't hate it because Obama's name on it is on it. It's not on it. That's just what people call it. But 17 Republicans broke with Speaker Johnson and President Trump, apparently over Venezuela, they said, some of them, to vote with the Democrats to prevent the ending of these health care subsidies for at least a year, I think. They expired, for 2 years.
Yes.
And these are essential to people that don't have health care. They need this. And taking it away would have exposed, I think, a lot of poor people to health problems and caused a greater burden on our society. What do you make of what happened with all this?
Well, first of all, I think it's the reason those 17 voted the way they voted is for self-preservation. I think they felt that they were not going to be able to get reelected if they did not do something to try to support health care that has helped a number of people. Now, it's been very expensive. I think the Obamacare bill, needs a lot of reform. But until you offer something else, this is what we have. This is what we have to go along with. So I think those 17 Republicans were voting the way they did to protect their own hide at the next general election, which really now isn't too far away. I don't think they cared about the situation in Venezuela. I don't really know how much they cared about health care, to be perfectly frank with you, but they cared about getting reelected. And this was a way to show their independence from Trump and also to show that they are concerned about people who do not have health care. I also think what it's doing, it's the first real crack in the monolithic support that Trump has had from Republicans, primarily in the House, but some in the Senate also. I understand it's going to go to the Senate now. It's going to be amended down from 3 years to 2 years, because I think it was 3 years in the House, down to 2 years. And there's going to be some other changes made. It supposedly is going to pass. Then it goes back to the House. And we really don't know what's going to happen in the House because these 17 Republican members have already been on record as saying they want to support this healthcare situation. Now, when it comes back, there are people who say, well, many of them are not going to vote for it because they're going to say, well, this is not the bill that I voted for in the first place. This does not solve the problem. So what they do, they showed people they wanted to help them, and now they get back on Trump's good side by not voting for this. The situation is really not that clear at the present time.
Yeah, and this bill came up, I think, in December and failed at a time when, you're right, but between December and now, clearly Trump's political base is cracking. And his insanity, these policies that he keeps doing, I think are worrying many of his Republican supporters. As you point out, they're worried about the midterm elections. And most of them are probably going to win renomination to the party in March or during these primaries this summer. But I think that they're exposed, and I think it's going to be huge. I think that the Democrats will win a lot of seats. There's even one woman here in Illinois running against Sean Casten, Nikki Conforti. And when I interviewed Conforti, she told me that she was going to reject AIPAC donations. She refuses to take any money from Israel, pro-Israel groups, to run and support her campaign. That's odd for a Republican to say that. But I think she realized that she can't win by taking such an extreme position. And I think that's what a lot of Republicans are seeing, that they may not be able to win in November. So we're going to see this Trump policies impact the election. And my hope is, I think yours too, that the Democrats take over the House, not because the Democrats are any better or they're not dysfunctional or they don't have problems. I think they certainly do. But because if we split the government with the Democrats controlling the House, the Republicans controlling the White House, maybe not the Senate, Trump can't do what he's doing. Trump will have a much harder time to do some of the crazy things he's doing. It's not going to stop him from spouting off and bragging and his pettiness and his misogyny and his narcissism. I mean, I have all these words that you often occasionally hear in politics. They're like common with him. Narcissism, misogyny, these apply to him more than they've ever applied to anybody else in our country. I think that may just kind of bring a lot of his craziness to a stop. That's my hope. But I was also going to say that they did a procedural vote, I think, Thursday in the Senate, and they were able to, it appeared that the measure got 52 Senate votes over 47 in this procedural effort to advance the bill. So there's still a sign that this thing could go through in the Senate, and Trump would then have to be forced to veto it. If he vetoes it, would they have enough? It would go to the House, right, to override the veto, or is it the House and Senate?
First of all, I believe it's going to be changed somewhat in the Senate. Therefore, it's going to have to go to a conference committee between the House and the Senate. So whatever comes out of the conference committee, I believe will give some Republicans in the House the opportunity to back off and say, this is not the bill that I wanted. This is not the bill I wanted to support. So I'm not going to vote for it this time around. But I still think it passes the House. It passes the Senate. It goes to Trump's desk. He can veto it. There's no way they're going to get enough votes to override a veto. So
really?
This is not going to be the solution. This is a step in the right direction for the future, but this is not going to do anything now. It's just people covering themselves for the next election. I'm convinced of that. And I was in that body for 22 years. There is nothing more important to any member of the House or Senate than to make sure they protect themselves from the next election. Very few have the courage to stand up and vote against the will of their constituents.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me is this is involving health care. Maybe if it were some other political issue, that we could probably see a partisan split and it go nowhere, but it would be very risky for Trump. I think that vetoing a health care bill to help people with health care, especially when health care is increasing dramatically, prescription costs, my prescriptions, I saw them go up 10% since January 1st, 10% increase in the wake of Trump constantly saying how he brought prescription prices down. You know, there were a couple prescription prices he brought down, a few, but he hasn't done anything with healthcare, and healthcare is a burden now on Americans. They're paying far more, including his people. His supporters are paying more for healthcare. The only ones not paying more for healthcare are his billionaire buddies who he seems to cater to, the bankers, the investors, the big business people. I think that's all he cares about. He doesn't care even about his own supporters. He's willing to see them die and sacrifice if it for the greater cause. And some of them, they're lemmings. They're willing to do it. It's just horrible.
Well, what's the greater cause here, Ray?
The greater cause for Trump is him. He wants to be president for life. I'm fearful that he might try to change the Constitution to create a monarchy where he becomes King Trump. I really do believe that in his mind, that's where he is at. And I think he is a threat to our constitutional democratic government, not Democratic Party, not Republican Party, but to the democracy that's the foundation of this country. he is a direct threat to that. I'm surprised that he's not taken on and sued and impeached. And if the House turns Democratic, we know he will be impeached, right? Do you have any doubt that the House will?
I have no doubt whatsoever that he will be impeached on numerous issues.
And
Absolutely.
and if they take over the Senate, how many Senate votes do you need to turn an impeachment into a conviction and take him out of
51.
office?
It's all this.
51.
Yeah.
So if they take the House and the Senate, we could be rid of this guy. It's very possible that that's the way to get rid of him. And maybe some Republicans might decide that that's the option. It'll be really interesting to see what happens.
So you would like to see the vice president become president in about 2 years?
Well, I would never vote for JD Vance because, these are wafflers. I mean, like Marco Rubio, he called Trump a con artist before he got appointed U.S. Secretary of State during the election. I don't know if you remember that. A con artist and all kinds of things he called him. And now Marco Rubio is standing with Trump, the con artist that he once called, to push all these policies. I think politicians most of them adapt to the circumstances, not Trump. He's crazy. He's not going to change. I even think that he's a victim of a little dementia. I think that, it's ironic that he used to attack Joe Biden and call him Sleepy Joe. I think it's Sleepy Don. And I think that he's having problems. So I could see if JD Vance took over that he might moderate, believing that it's for his own good rather than Trump's legacy. So, yeah, I mean, he could. Now, not that I would vote for him, but I think he'd be much more moderate as a presidential candidate.
I agree with that very definitely. There are people who believe that Trump is getting some kind of inoculation. I shouldn't call it inoculation.
Yeah,
just
like a shot.
Yeah, to stave off Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah.
You can see it on the back of his hand. I don't know if that's true or if it's not true. I probably heard it on CNN or something like that. And I doubt anytime CNN says something against Trump, I have to doubt it. Just like when Fox News says something about a Democrat, I have to doubt it because unfortunately, journalism has gone out the window. These are all propaganda machines.
Yes, we don't have any real journalism today. Well, obviously, this is a problem for Trump, this whole thing, everything we've talked about, because today on his Truth Social platform, he said that he's going to cut credit card interest rates to 10% for 1 year. And the more you research this, to me, it's like he's trying to do this because he needs to offset what he sees clearly is an anti-Trump wave building up in this country in the election. And he thinks that, well, he can't achieve his promises on the economy to stop war. He's failed in my book on every principle that he said, I can do this in a day. I'll stop the Ukraine war. I'll stop the Gaza war. He says he brought ceasefire to Gaza. That's not true. Gaza and Israel are still at war. He's pretending like we're not having a war there, and the media just goes along with him. The point is he can't do anything that he says he's going to do, but he's going to cut this to 10% so he can get past the election and say, look what I did. For the average person now in debt because of his policies, they will be able to pay less in interest rates on the borrowing that they have to do to survive on their credit cards. But I think he's just doing this to bring the banks in after the election and get them on his side and get them to start talking with him now for business purposes. This is all about Trump.
He also said, maybe 2-3 weeks ago, he was going to have all the insurance companies in and tell them they've got to do something about cutting down their fees because they're making too much money. It's not right. And if they're not going to do anything, he's going to do something about it. Has that taken place yet?
No, that's not taken place. But he likes to say things so that he can then go back to, well, I said I wanted to do it. It's the Democrats' fault. And then he'll turn it around and blame them for it not happening. This is really just so transparent on his part. He's a fake, and I think it's disgraceful. But do in I think credit card debt is a problem in this country,
It
and
is.
he
There's no question
realized
about
that,
it.
and that's why he's addressing it, but not for the real reasons. And I hope Americans are smart enough to see that this guy's just using their suffering to benefit his politics.
Well, I still think the number one issue in this country is affordability. And the number one division within affordability is people going to the grocery store, buying groceries, and seeing the significant rise in everything that you have bought. I have
Yes.
said this before, I will say it again because it happened to me again 2 days ago. I went to the store, it cost me $135. I sat down and checked what it had cost me for the same items 6 months ago. It had risen almost $60 on those
Wow.
items. That's ludicrous. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
we can't sustain something like that. And fine, I can afford it, you can afford it, other people can afford taking it. But there's many people in this country who cannot afford it. And there are many of people in this country who are being sucked out of the middle class because everything that they have to spend for groceries. And that, I think, is the single issue that is really going to sink Trump and the Republican Party in the next November election.
yeah, and I completely agree with that. I think that is the issue that he's going to try to address, like with this 10% uh, ceiling on interest rates on credit cards. Yeah, that would be great. I wish it were really for the right motives, but it's not. And it's going to be temporary, and we're going to be end up paying more because of him. And I blame him for our economy being bad. I think his tariffs, the way he did it, were reckless. He used it as a bludgeon to get what he wanted rather than to bring down prices. And he went back and forth so erratically. I think people in our food industry and our business industry saw these threats of a tariff and used it as cover to raise the prices on their products. It's not because of tariffs, whether they've gone up or down. Prices have gone up because business saw this as an opportunity to, hey, let's just raise prices. We'll blame it on Trump. We'll blame it on whatever. He created that atmosphere. Listen, Bill, you wrote a great column this week on rare earth minerals. And for our readers, it's at hanania.com where we have our syndication. Bill writes there, I write there. Give us a little summary of what that's about.
Well, rare earth are minerals that more and more each and every day are an absolute necessity for military. They go into jet fighter planes, they go into bombs, you name it. Anything that we now use in the military almost has to have rare earth materials. Now, these are materials that can be extracted from rocks, but they are only in various parts of the world. They're not in every country. They're not in every, time zone. They are not in every continent. China has a lot of them. About 30 years ago, Chinese scientists realized how significant these rare earth materials would be for the military and for the economy generally. We need them for cell phones. We need them for TV sets. There is almost nothing electronic that today we don't need these materials for. The Russians have an almost the Chinese have an almost absolute monopoly on this. 80% of items that use rare earth has to be purchased from China. We have been asleep at the switch that we haven't done anything about it. If China were to cut off exporting rare earth materials to us or to any other country, it wouldn't be long and they could dominate us. So I am saying that we in the United States have to have a Marshall Plan like we had after the Second World War to rebuild Europe, to go out, find the rare earth materials in this country, start mining them, start processing them so we can become independent. We don't want to depend upon any other country, particularly a country like China, who is becoming more and more aggressive all the time. Now, we have tons and tons of this material in California, some of them up in Minnesota, and in other states. The big impediment has been environmental controls on this stuff because it is tough to mine. It's tough to process, and it does do some pollution. So people have been opposed to us doing it. But I would rather have some pollution than to wind up being dominated by China and their ally Russia. So that's what I wrote the column about, trying to make people aware of that situation. And the people who brought it really home to me was the New York Times. They had several articles about it. They did several editorials about it. And as I said in my column, my tricorner hat is off and my trusty old colonial musket is raised in salute to the New York Times for making the American people aware of this. Now, unfortunately, I have not heard our president say one single word about this. Why, I don't know, but there is an issue that he really has to unite the American people. We have to get busy on this because we could lose our freedom if we don't do something about this. And I'm not exaggerating. These rare earth materials, you name it electronically, they now go into all these important items militarily, economically.
All right, Bill, I think that was a great column, and you're right. Probably Trump isn't addressing it because he doesn't see how it could benefit him. He probably doesn't have any investments in rare earth minerals that are so crucial to our national defense. I don't believe he cares about us. It sounds like I'm being harsh on him, but the truth is, yeah, I'm harsh against anybody that jeopardizes our country, and I'm just not going to hold back anymore. All right, Bill, any other final thoughts on anything?
No, not right now. Just pray for America, Ray. I lived through the civil rights movement. I lived through the women's liberation movement. I lived through the demonstrations that took place during the Vietnam War. All of these were important issues. All of these generated a great deal of demonstrations by people, a lot of civil disobedience, but none of them really generated the division into Americans that this situation has done at the present time. We must do something to bring us back together. Many great people over the course of the years have always said, if America is ever to be brought down, it's not going to be externally, it's going to be internally. And I believe that we are at one of those points in history now, and we have to unite and stop the erosion of support for America.
All right, everybody, listen, thank you. I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski.
And this has been
Two Guys on Politics.
And we will see you again. Thank you very much for joining us. By the way, Bill, you want to email him. He's at billlipinski@hotmail.com. And I'm at rghanania@gmail.com. If you want to send us your thoughts, we always appreciate and welcome them. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.